before I do the inlay on the headstock, I'm going to drill the machines, just so that we're not doing too much to the headstock once we've got the inlay in, and potentially perhaps breaking the shell. I just want to make sure most of the headstock's pretty much finished before I do the inlay. Now, because of timings, I don't think I'm going to be able to include the inlay in this video. So this video is basically just me drilling 6 holes. But there is stuff we can cover, because I want to get a nice crisp hole, and it is possible just to do that by just drilling straight the way through if you've got a backing board. If you're not careful, you'll create tear out on the other side. Certainly having good quality drills helps prevent that. But the best way of ensuring you get a nice crisp hole is to drill in from each side, meeting in the middle. And the way we do that is with a pilot hole. Now, you also need good quality drills for this, and these are the drills I'm using, Colt. They're a little bit expensive, well, what I think is expensive. They were £50 at a knockdown price at a trade show. But they are very good quality, they're very well made, brad point, and apart from the fact they are super sharp and super accurate, the point of the brad point tip is in the centre, which is something I can't guarantee with my cheaper brad point drills. Brad point drills. So good quality drills, essential. The fact that they're brad point means that there is another way you can do this, which is something I've used on thicker pieces of material where they're too thick for a pilot hole. If you're drilling a 2mm pilot hole, it's very difficult to get long 2mm drills. So if it's more than just a few centimetres thick, you can't get that pilot hole all the way through. With these, because the brad point is proud of the other 2 prongs, if you measure very carefully, if you put a gauge on the drill, if you measure very carefully, you can drill through the exact width of the piece so that the brad point is just starting to emerge on the other side. You've got to be very careful doing this. It's not something I'd recommend. Once it's emerged on the other side, you can then drill in from the other side, because you can see where the centre of the drill bit is, and so you can just finish it off by drilling in from the other side. You've got to be very careful doing that. You've got to be very gentle with the drill and just take it very slowly. But it is possible, and it is a technique I've used on another piece. So before I drill the headstock, let me just tease another project I'm working on, and I'll just show you where I used that technique. I've positioned this very carefully so you can't actually see the rest of it to work out what it is. This is going to be a surprise video in a month or two's time, when I've finished the rest of it. But here's where I am so far. Can you guess what it is? But the way I did this, it was a 10mm pilot hole, and then I just opened it out with a chisel to create my square peg in a round hole scenario. But what I did with this, because this was wider than my 2mm drill, the 2mm drill would only reach this far, I measured and marked on this drill, and so I just drilled through very carefully, and then as I got towards the bottom of the hole, I just gently with sort of hand pressure until I'd reached sort of this point where the tip of the drill was just on the surface. And in fact, if I took the pressure off the drill and stopped the drill, I could just feel that the point had emerged, and then I could flip the work over. I could see the point, and then I could just drill in from this side to create a nice clean cut hole. Tear out wasn't critical on this, but the trouble with tear out is you never know if a fibre is going to rip down into the rest of the work. So even though I was going to be chiselling away at this to create a square hole, I still wanted to start with a really crisp hole, so I used this drilling from both sides technique on this piece. There's a little puzzle for you. What am I making? First thing I'm going to do is mark where the holes need to go. So I'm going to clamp our template onto the headstock. That's all good. And then use the fact that we have a brad point with a point to just mark where the holes need to go. I do like having templates because it takes some of the thinking away. You have to put effort into making the template, but we know these are in the right place and we don't have to do any measuring. And there we go. Having to use 2 blocks of spacers because of the headstock shape. Obviously we want to have this perpendicular to the front face, and the back isn't actually level anyway, so yeah, we should be alright like this. Note how much tear out there is, even with a 2mm drill. Those are very fuzzy holes. This is why we're doing it this way. This is barely on the flat. I will try drilling that as the first hole, although tear out on this one isn't so critical because a lot of this will be carved away. But we'll try that one first just to see whether we can get a clean cut through what isn't quite flat. It starts to rise on this side, which we'll see. We'll see how well that goes. That went quite well, better than I feared. I thought it might grab the headstock and move it, but that's nicely centered. Nicely centered. Even if I hadn't lined it up precisely, because I was holding it sort of freehand instead of clamping it, the pilot holes should have pulled the drill back on center. to keep everything centered. If you're wondering how I was able to hold it so steady, it just happened with a couple of spacers. It rested on the bench and it was all very, very stable. Quite a nice arrangement. 6 really clean holes, front and back. Well, even if I've achieved nothing else, at least I get to see what it looks like with the machine heads on for the first time. So it's looking good. We'll see you in the next video. Bye!